Welcome to this section. Here we will try to understand OOPS concepts in Python and we will relate them with Java. We are going to take purely the practical based approach. So let's start. Let's start with a very simple example in Java. We have one class employee where we have two instance variable, one static variable, one constructor, then two instance methods, one static method, two string method which is overridden, and then we have main method. We created two objects inside the main method, and with the object reference we called instance methods. Constructor will be called automatically when the object is created, and here when we print the object, then toString method would call automatically. Then we access static variable directly inside the static method. So static variable or static method can be called inside the static method directly. We don't need any object reference to call them. We can now run this program and you see the expected output. So let's start creating the same program in Python. For that we are using PyCharm as a IDE. If I want to create a class in Python, then I can say class and then class name. I'll then say colon. If I want to create an empty class, then I can use pass keyword. So this is the empty class. Now if I want to create an object of this class, then I'll say employee, and then I can hold the object reference in E1 variable. If I want to create another object, then I can say E2 equals to this, and then I'll say print E1 and print E2. Let's run this program now. You see that we have now output, but that is a hash code. We have toString function in Java to represent the object. Similarly, we have the similar function in Python through which we can represent the object. Let's create the constructor first. How can I create the constructor? I'll say def, then init, and then we have to pass self as a parameter. In Java, constructor name has to be same as the class name, but this is not the case in Python. In Python, constructor name should be init only, and self is similar to this in Java. So self is the current object. In Java, this is implicit. So compiler used to pass this as an parameter to the constructor and to all the instance methods. But in Python, self is mandatory to all the instance method, including the constructor. So within this constructor, I can now define other variables, that is name and salary. I'll then say self.name equals to name, self.salary equals to salary. I will define one class level variable, that is count, and I'll initialize it with 0. So in Python, the class level variable is nothing but the static variable. So now in constructor, I'll say employee.count equals to employee.count plus 1. So in Python, you will always refer the static variable by class name. Now let's create the instance methods, and I will write them like this. We need to pass self as a mandatory parameter to all the instance methods. Then we create the static method. How can I create the static method? I'll say def get count and I'll return employee.count. Now since this is the static method, I'll have to use one annotation, that is static method. And for the static methods, we do not have to pass self as a parameter. Now the next function is toString function. Now to fulfill the purpose for toString function of Java, we have one similar function in Python, that is repr. So I'll write this function and then I'll return repr. You see that here repr function can only accept one parameter, but we need to return two parameters, right? Name as well as salary. For this purpose, we can use tuple. So this is now the one parameter. It's like this. We will anyways look at the tuple more in details in the upcoming sessions. Now let's pass the values for employee name and salary. So I'll say Ayush and salary. Then I'll call instance method with this reference. So I'll say E1 dot increase salary and I'll pass the value. Similarly, I'll do the same for other object as well. So this is also done. Now we have printed the object and now I can print employee count. I'll say print total number of employees is count and I'll use formatted string. Here it is static variable, so I need to call it by class name. So I'll say employee.count, and if I want to call the static method, then I can say employee.getCount. So I'll run this program now and we have the same output. So this is as simple as that. One point you can note here that in Java, your public class name should exactly match with the file name. However, there are no such restrictions in Python. In Python, any file that you create is called module. So it's not a class, it's module. And a module can contain any number of classes. So best practice is to give a high level name, not a class name. Next topic is method or constructor overloading. So in Python, we cannot overload method or constructor. Let's see this with the example. So we have one class and we have one constructor and we don't have any other parameter except self. So I'll create the object of this class. I'll run this program and we got the output. I'll now add another constructor and here I'll say this is second constructor and I'll pass one parameter name. Let's run this program again and we got the error. What happens when Python sees a method which has the same name as the earlier method? What it does, it removes the first method completely. It acts as if this method does not really exist at all. So it will only see this method, and since we have one parameter name, then we need to pass the value while creating the object. So when I pass the value and I'll run the program again, then we will have output. Same is the case for methods. Next is another interesting point that we need to look at. In Java, you need to first define an instance variable, then only you can set the value to it, right? So when I run this program, it will give me the expected result. But if I don't define the variable, then this will throw an error, right? But in Python, that is not necessary. You can add attributes dynamically at runtime. So here we did not define this variable above, and when I run this program, it will give me the expected result. Next important concept in OOPS is inheritance. Let's look at the Java example first. So we have one class employee which is being inherited in another class, that is programmer. And in order to inherit the class, we can use extends keyword. So now when the employee class is inherited in programmer, so all the members of employee class will become part of programmer class. Constructor will never become part of child class. So here in programmer class, we created a constructor and here we called the immediate parent class constructor with this statement. So when we create the object of programmer, we will pass three values to the parameters: name, salary, and bonus. As soon as the object is created, this constructor will be called. Also, in toString function, in order to call the parent class toString function, we can use super keyword. So when this is called, it will return name and salary. So I'll run this program and we got the expected output. Now we need to see that how can we create the same program in Python. So let's create the employee class first. I'll say class employee. I'll now define the constructor. So this is my constructor. I'll now implement the toString function. So I'll define the toString function like this. Next, we need to create the programmer class. And in programmer class, we need to inherit the employee class. So how can I inherit the class in Python? I can say class programmer and I will mention the employee class like this. I'll say colon and this is done. Now let's create the constructor. So I'll say def init, then I'll mention the parameter self and rest all the parameters. Now I need to call the parent class constructor. So I'll call the parent class constructor like this. I'll then say self.bonus equals to bonus. So constructor is created. Let's implement the toString function and I'll write the repr function like this. Now let's create the object. So object is created and now let's print this object. Let's now run this program. We got the error because we missed colon here. Let's run it again. And we got the output. Now here if you want to inherit more than one classes, then you can separate the class name with comma here. So for example, if you have another class student that you want to inherit, so you will inherit like this. Now that we understood inheritance, the next thing that we should know is polymorphism. Polymorphism means one name, many forms. For example, here you can see that we have init method in employee class. Also, we have the same method in programmer class. So we can have methods with the same name in different classes, but both the methods are doing the different things. And this is polymorphism. We can make this code more simple to understand this concept. So I'll delete these methods from here as well as from programmer class, and I'll delete this as well. Now what I'll do, I'll create the simple method that is display. So I'll say this and I'll print the message as I am employee. Now I'll create the same function in programmer class. So at the moment, let's not inherit the employee class in programmer, and I'll create the same method, and here I'll display programmer. Now let's create the object for both of the classes. So objects are created. And now with the object reference, let's call the display method. I'll say e.display and p.display. Let's run this program and we got the output as expected. So with that, we understood that we can have the method with the same name in different classes. Now if we inherit the employee class in programmer, then also we will get the same output. So when I run this program, I got the same output. And this is called method overriding. So with the method overriding in Python, we can achieve polymorphism. However, in Java, we can achieve the polymorphism with the method overloading as well as with the method overriding. But in Python, there is no concept of method overloading as such. That we already saw, right? Now there is one another way to do this thing. So what I'll do, instead of doing this, I'll create a list. So I'll say person equals to employee and programmer. So we created a list with both the objects. And now what I'll do, I'll loop around this list. So I'll say for object in person and I'll say obj.display. I'll mention the colon here. And now when we run this program, we got the same result. This concept in Python is known as duck typing. Another important concept of hoops is abstraction. We can take this example from Java where we have one abstract class and that is having one abstract function. Now we have two classes, class Axis and class HSBC. Both the classes are inheriting the abstract class and providing the implementation of abstract method. So when I create the object of Axis class, I'll hold the reference of Axis class in the parent class, and with the reference when I call the method, then the child class method will be called. So here this function should be called and we should get the value as 3. Similarly for HSBC, the value that should return is 4. So I'll run this program and we got the expected output. Now we need to see that how can we create the same program in Python. So in Python, I can write the same program like this. For creating the abstract class, you need to extend ABC, which is abstract base class. You would need to import a module called ABC and import abstract base class and abstract method. So inside the abstract class, you have abstract method that you would indicate by annotation abstract method. Then you'll inherit this abstract class in both the child class and implement the abstract method. Then you can create the object and you can call the function, and now let's check the output and we got the expected output. So this is as simple as that. You just need to learn that how can we create an abstract class and abstract method. Now in Java, we have another similar concept, that is interface. So abstract class can have an abstract method and as well as the normal method. But in interface, you can have only abstract method, but that is true up to Java 7. From Java 8, even your Java interfaces can have default implementations. So given that scenario, having two different things, interfaces and abstract classes, just to add the confusion. So with that perspective, I think Python made the right choice not to really have the separate concept called the interface. Next important concept of OOPS is encapsulation. To understand this, let's look at this example in Java. So you have one class, employee, and you have one member variable, that is age. And what you are doing, you are trying to access this variable outside of this class. So in the test class, you're creating the object of employee, and with the object reference, you're calling the variable directly. And that is what we want to prevent. Encapsulation means that only the class should have access to the data inside the specific class, and all the other class should access the data through the behavior of the class. And how do we represent the behavior in Java? We create methods for that. So how can I prevent this member to access out of this class? I can say that it is private. Now when I run this program, it will throw me the error. Now I cannot access this variable outside of the employee class because it is defined as private. So what I'll do, I'll create something called getter and setter. So this is my getter. I defined this as a public and this is setter. Now if I want to access the age in test class, then I can call the function getAge, and this way age will be printed. Another advantage of encapsulation is that you can add validation in your class. So let's consider the scenario that when it was not private, then outside the class you can set the value for this variable like this. Now I'll comment this line and I'll uncomment it. And let's run this program now. So age, that is 30, will be printed. But what if you set it to -30? Then what happens? If we run this program, you see that we got the output as -30. But we know that age cannot be negative. So to prevent such cases, what you can do, I'll comment this line again, comment this, uncomment this. So I'll make it private back. I'll comment this line. Okay. So here you can add the validation. You can say that if age is greater than 0, then you set it to object. So now when we call this function outside of the class, so I'll say e.setAge and I'll say 30. So now we got the output as 30. So this way we can prevent putting the bad data into your object. And that's one of the most important thing about encapsulation. So if you have methods, you can have validation around that what can go into your object and what cannot. Now we need to see that how can we create the same program in Python. Now here in Python program, we created a class and we initialized one variable in constructor. Then outside of the class, we created an object of employee and then we tried printing the variable with the object reference. So when we run this program, we will get the output as 30. And here, how can I make this variable private so that it cannot be accessed outside of the class? For that, I can put __ as a prefix to this variable. Now when we run this program, we will get the error. Now we defined this variable as a private to employee class. So it cannot be accessed outside of the class. For that, we can create the getter and setter here as well. So how can I create? So I can create the getter and setter like this. Now we can access this variable with the getter function. So I'll say print e.getAge. And when I run this program now, I will get the output as 30. We can set the age as well. So for that, I can call the method setAge. So I'll say e.setAge and I'll say 31. Now when I run this program, I'll get the output as 31. And here also you can add the validation. You can say if age is greater than 0, then you can set the value into the object. And when we run this program now, we will get the output. So this is how you can achieve the encapsulation in Python. This is as simple as that. In this video, we understood the basic concept of OOPS in Python. We saw that if we know that how to write the program in Java related to object-oriented programming, then how can we write the same program in Python? I hope you enjoyed this video. I wish you a very happy learning journey with me. Thank you.